So I just diagnosed a bad dual capacitor on this split heat pump. We stocked these turbo 200s on our truck. I talked to the building owner. They wanted to get it taken care of as soon as possible. So they approved go ahead and doing this repair. So first off, obviously I went and grabbed my part up here now. I'm gonna check, make sure power is still off, which I already know it is, but I'm gonna check. So I'm just gonna check my incoming power. I have zero volts. Next, my old capacitor's right here. That new one will not fit in that spot. But I'm going to basically disconnect all these wires down here. Now that I know I have no power, I'll take a quick picture just to know where I'm putting everything. Luckily this one's pretty simple. I can even trace back the wires pretty easily, or look at the schematic if I had to, but just creature of habit. I always take a picture before I disconnect stuff, because sometimes you could even bump a random wire on something else and your picture might show where that went to as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect all these wires, get this old one out, and basically walk through how to set up this new one. So I ended up getting that capacitor out. You can see it's right here. You can actually see a lot better now, this little bulge on the top. Usually a really good indicator these are failed. Obviously you always want to test it with a meter, test your capacitance with a meter, but I was getting 0 on all the readings on this. You can see this is 35 microfarad for the compressor, 5 microfarad for the condensing fan motor. And then when you're testing it, it says within plus or minus 6% of the 35 or the 5. So if you're testing it and you're getting a different, if you actually had some reading of any sort to kind of preventively diagnose and replace one of these, like say if I had 28 microfarad on the compressor, I'd know I probably need to replace it, or at least suggest it or write it up. But yeah, these are always stamped on these capacitors. Even if it's just a single standard capacitor, it'll have your ratings. It also, like I stated in the video when I wrote this up, it will be stamped on the condensing fan motor on that data tag you see right there, as well as the data tag on the compressor. Compressor one here is really faded, but always worst case scenario, you can call in and verify with a parts house. One thing to be aware of is even if you're ever doing like a motor or something like that, making sure you have the correct one. I mean, I always recommend checking your data tag on the new motor or the compressor. Sometimes some of these parts supersede each other and it could be a different capacitor than what was in there before, maybe a little bigger, maybe a little smaller. I've seen that happen as well. So I have all my wire leads here that were going to my capacitor. It's pretty easy to kind of even trace some of these out, like this brown. You can kind of see coming up, it's going to my condensing fan motor. So pretty quickly I know that's my condensing fan motor, so that'll be on that 5. And then this is my common, these orange ones were, and then this is going to my compressor, this purple wire. I did have to relocate this little relay. This relay got added, I think, by whoever did this install. Pretty sure there's a mixing box down below on that one, and so they have essentially like an economizer. So they had to redo some of the wiring since this is a heat pump, just so all that worked correctly. So I just relocated to the other side. A big thing to be conscious of when you're doing any of these screws, when you're next to the coil, is making sure what's on the other side, that you don't just shoot a screw in, hit a coil, puncture it, and kind of screw yourself on that and make a repair a whole lot worse. But with these kits over here, with this with these turbos, basically you get really easy step-by-step instructions. I mean, once you do one, you'll probably never look at these instructions again. But you basically have all these readings going around it, different ones, because this being a universal one, I could use it for so many different applications. The middle one here is your common, and then going around it, so I had the 5 microfarad for going to my condensing fan motor, and then I need to basically make a 35 so I could jumper. Looks like I'm about to use a couple jumpers, so I'll have to do the 20 at 10 and then the other open 5 spot. And by the jumpers, in this kit comes with these little jumpers, and you basically just kind of daisy chain through to make the proper rating of what you need. You can kind of see it here in the picture, like they have these jumpers going from one to another, and I'll show it here once I put them all on. Another thing it comes with is these zip ties, so that you can mount it in a different spot. Obviously these can be bigger or smaller than what was in there, so it kind of just gives you a fairly decent zip tie with a hole so you can mount it. And then it always comes with these little self-tapper screw, so you can mount it. So like I said, I moved this just because this wire going to the compressor isn't super long. So I'm probably gonna be mounting it somewhere in this general area. So yeah, I will go ahead and get that set up and show you what it looks like. So I got these jumpers put on like I talked about. So I'm going from my 20 to my 10 over to my 5. And so when I hook up that purple compressor wire here, I usually just hook it up to one end or the other. It doesn't really matter which one. And that'll take care of that circuit. And then my fan, don't have to jump or anything. I just put it right straight to the 5, and then my commons will be in the middle here. So that's pretty easily how you can set them up, and that's what's so nice is you can do so many applications. This one can range anywhere from a 5 to a 97.5. I mean, you could in a bind just use this if you had like a single capacitor, you needed a 5 or something like that, but I mean, this is obviously super overkill. They do make different sizes that do much smaller, that are a lot smaller, and they do one that's a little bit smaller than this. This is the one we stock just because it covers so many different ranges, just to get us out of a bind, or if they are in desperate need of a repair right then. We're not going to stock, 50 or whatever different capacitors in our trucks. So yeah, I will go ahead and get this all mounted so you can kind of see what it looks like, and we'll go from there. So before I get this mounted, I just want to show you, I got my commons going into the center like I talked about. I have my fan, which is that 5 microfarad, going to my 5, and then I have my compressor one going right here. Another thing to make sure you're checking is these little terminals aren't loose, so I had to crimp down one of these common ones because it was so loose I could basically just flick it and it comes off. Obviously you don't want stuff like that happening. You're gonna have a lot of arcing and stuff like that, and probably eventually take out a motor or cause a lot more issues. So just check, make sure your terminals are good. Sometimes I've seen these too where they get like really weak and on the actual wire, and crack or are broken, and you basically just need to cut them off and replace them real quick. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get this mounted. I just want you to be able to see the wiring. It's a little easier to see like this, and go from there. So one more thing, when you put these in, you always want to write down what the value is. So obviously if this thing fails again in the future, people will know what the value is. I mean, they can obviously add up, but if you've never seen one of these things, they might not know what they're looking at. Also, it's just nice to have it written down in case maybe the person who set it up did it wrong or anything like that. They actually have a way they can check what the old values were without having to call and sit on hold with a parts house and figure it all out. So obviously I got my 35 and 5, and then everything all documented that was off of the old one, and basically give you that screw to kind of hold it in. I like to get it up tight to this little lip to kind of hold it in there, and I cinch it down really tight. I did get another screw in here just to kind of help it sit in here a little bit better, just so it's not flopping around or vibrating or doing anything weird. Obviously it's a lot bigger and makes the whole compartment a little tighter, but it's just what we're doing here to get them up and going. And yeah, so now that is basically how you install one. When I wrote this up, I told them I'd further test. I had previously ohmed out compressor and tested some of the other components, and everything looked good. So now I got this in here, I'll go ahead and give it a check and see what we got going on. Well, I ended up turning on power. Condensing fan motor kicked on right away, which is a good sign. Compressor, I can hear it running. Just kind of touching the pipe just to get a general idea. It feels like it should. I'll further test everything, but the whole purpose of this video is mostly showing how to install this dual capacitor, how it can get you out of a bind, talk about the product a little bit. Just something that our company stocks and has gone with. We haven't had any issues with us putting them in. They can be more pricey than like an OEM part, but obviously coming back on a second trip is a lot more pricey than something I have on me to take care of it right now. So that's the video. If you have anything to add, feel free to leave it in the comment section, or if you have any questions on it, or maybe things you ran into if you put them in yourself. Please subscribe and hit the like button, helps me out a lot. I appreciate you watching.